Well, good afternoon. I am Pastor Rhonda, founder of Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry, and we are telling cancer survivors stories as a means of encouragement and empowerment for those that are in the journey, for those may have reoccurrence, or even those that may be metastatic. But we also want to be a blessing and encouragement to caregivers. Because sometimes we realize that you just don't know what to do, but you have such a huge heart and you want to support your loved one. So we're sharing stories to help be an encouragement to that. And today we have with us Miss Stori. Hey, Stori, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So I'm glad to have you with us today. And there's no reason for us to delay any further. So please share your story.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stori Nagel. I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 38 years old. That was 2012. It wasn't a huge shock to me. I was told when I was about 12 that breast cancer ran in my family. Multiple sclerosis also ran in my family. So it was kind of like a crapshoot, like which one you're going to get. And so when I did get diagnosed at 38, I had went in a year prior at 37 with a concern because I had quite a large lump in my right breast. And the doctor poo-pooed it and pretty much said, you don't have to worry about it because it grows linear. So this way. So apparently cancer doesn't grow linear in his opinion. But I just went on my merry way. I listened to what the doctor had to say instead of my own heart, which probably wasn't a good idea. And a year later, the lump was about the size of a baked potato. So like you go to Sizzler, you get that big old potato wrapped in foil. That's about as big as it was here. But the nice thing was that it was the breast cancer had kind of hardened the fibrous tumors that were already in my breast. So if you have fibristic or fibrous breasts, they tend to feel on the lumpy side. So when you go in and have them checked out by your doctor, or you go and get an ultrasound, they just look like they're just full of tumors. So it's kind of hard to tell which one's the problem one. Well, the problem one was the one that was big and hard. So went in and they decided to do chemotherapy ahead of time to try and shrink the tumor. So before I had started any of the treatment, before I got the any of the ball rolling, I got the news and I went home before I had told my husband or my kids or anybody else. And I just prayed to myself and I said, God, I don't know what this is for. What's this for? And I had heard a very distinct voice tell me inside my head, this isn't so much going to change you as it's going to change the people around you. And so from then on, I saw that I had a mission. Like the Blues Brothers say, I'm on a mission from God. And I wasn't scared. I had complete faith in that God was going to carry me through whatever it was, because he told me he had a job for me. So my job was to go through this treatment. And the first 4 rounds of chemotherapy weren't so bad. I lost my hair, which being part Sasquatch was kind of a happy thing. Was pulling it out like in confetti and throwing it all over the bathroom. Whee! Because I was so happy to not have to shave from here down. The first 4 rounds weren't so bad. Kind of had a gross metallic taste in my mouth. Lost my hair, but besides that, it wasn't so bad. But the tumor wasn't shrinking. So I go in, they do another ultrasound. The techs start whispering to each other. And I thought that was kind of scary. And one of them comes over and starts patting me on the hand and going, oh, sweetheart, don't worry, you know, you're everything's going to be okay. And she's looking at the screen and saying to herself, you're on chemo. Your cancer couldn't have grown while you were on chemo. And then I just kind of freaked out because it sounded like it was growing and I was on chemotherapy. So they went and put me on a really harsh chemotherapy, which was not fun and made me kind of like a zombie for the next 4 rounds. I had blacked out after the second one and was unresponsive for about 7 minutes. So they call it going into shock. So basically your blood pressure goes so low that it just can't maintain cognitive function anymore. And I just passed out, and I was sitting there with my mouth gaping open, and I just got done in the shower, and I came back to, and my husband's freaking out, and I don't know why he's freaking out. I'm just kind of giggling. He's like, "Don't worry, the ambulance is coming." And I was like, "For what?" "Well, because you blacked out." So my daughter goes and gets a robe and gives me a robe, but it's one of those like soccer mom robes that doesn't really cover you completely. And so I'm apologizing to the techs because I'm just naked in this robe, that they have to look at me naked, right? And so I go to the hospital, check me out, nothing. They won't say it's from chemo or anything like that. It was the first time I maybe realized that the medication wasn't so good for me. And you know, they say the cure doesn't kill you, but that wasn't my first run-in with it. So I went on with it and ended up having a double mastectomy, which my biggest fear was losing my husband, not losing my breast, because for all intents and purposes, it seemed like he was a boob man. And so like not having them made me think I was going to lose him, because at this point in my life, I thought I served no other purpose in life other than to be a mother and to satisfy him in that way. So I couldn't see any other reason why he would want to be around or why I would be of value. So I got the double mastectomy, and then a month later they said, well, we had frozen some of your lymph nodes, and there were a couple of cells that were alive. So I had to go back in and get lymph nodes removed. And they were warning me that this surgery was worse than the first. Worse than the first. So worse than a radical double mastectomy. How much worse can it be than that? Well, it wasn't so bad, but the side effects from the surgery were what they were talking about. So you can get frozen shoulder, where you can't leave your arm above here. So that wasn't fun. And got that done, did the reconstruction. They sent me on to a radiation oncologist. Radiation oncologist says, how much bigger are you going to go? And at this point, I had maybe one fill and so of saline for the expanders. And I was thinking, well, what do you mean? How much bigger am I going to go? I don't have hardly anything. And she just proceeds to keep asking me. And sometimes you think if you have a female doctor, that the female doctor is going to be more empathetic towards your plight because you too are a female. But that's not always the case. I ended up talking to my plastic surgeon about it, and he said a lot of doctors that have the capacity to know about all the ins and outs of all the surgery and cancer treatment and all this stuff don't necessarily have room for personality. So once he told me that, I was a lot easier with getting my feelings hurt by the radiation oncologist, and I did not get radiation based on the way this woman treated me. But I think in the end, it was the best choice for me. So in that moment, I learned that what feels right in my heart is the right choice for me. So I didn't get radiation done, but I immediately started tamoxifen because I was estrogen positive. So what that means is the cancer itself is driven by something. So if you think of like a diesel engine's run by diesel, gasoline engines run by gasoline. That's what's fueling the car to go. So what is fueling your cancer to go is an excess of estrogen. So tamoxifen is an estrogen suppressor. So it doesn't get rid of your estrogen altogether. It just kind of like putting a wet blanket like over a fire. So it doesn't extinguish it completely. what it does do is it turns down the estrogen in your ovaries, but it kind of ends up turning up the estrogen in your uterus and your cervix. So after about 2.5 years, I started hemorrhaging really badly, and I didn't know what was happening. By this time, I was a state leader for the Young Survival Coalition, which is a nonprofit that mostly does a lot of support groups for young women. So young women meaning under 50. But if you're over 50, we're not going to turn you away. A lot of it has to do with mindset and not necessarily your chronological age. So I ended up having a hysterectomy. No one told me not to take my tamoxifen. And I honestly was in such a hurry to not have radiation. I really didn't even read the side effects for the tamoxifen, but I ended up having a hysterectomy. They did not plan on removing my ovaries, but when they opened me up, they saw that one ovary was completely covered in cysts so much that they thought I had ovarian cancer. So I wake up from surgery, and again, when a doctor or tech like puts their hand like on your hand and like leans in and goes like this, you're like, oh geez, what is it? So she said, oh, we had a couple complications. You were hemorrhaging. We just kept clamping you off and you just kept bleeding. So we had to give you 2 blood transfusions. And we had to remove one of your ovaries completely because we thought that it too had, you had ovarian cancer. So they had found cells within my uterus and cervix that were slowly turning cancerous. So it wasn't like full-blown cancer, but they were turning cancerous as a result of the tamoxifen that was given to me to try and help save my life, basically, or to deter a recurrence. So being a state leader for Young Survival Coalition, and also always knowing that what works for me doesn't work for you. So what works for me, I'm never going to try and sell you on what works for me. I could suggest it, but I'm never going to do the hard sell because I don't like getting the hard sell for myself. Like a recommendation is fine, but I understand that we're all individually operating systems, that we all, respond to treatment differently, and we all respond to medication. Heck, we all respond differently to like the foods that we eat. So, we gotta respond differently to medication. So I didn't publicly tell people to go off tamoxifen. If I'm in support groups and they're talking about it, I just tell them to direct message me if they want to hear my story, because I don't want to scare anybody. I don't think scaring, any kind of scare tactic, works good for anyone. But about this time, I started going to support groups for the Young Survival Coalition, and I started to notice that the people were talking about their chest in kind of like a detached manner. So they'd say my lumps and not my breasts. And then they were also telling me that, sharing within the group how their husbands and partners would no longer touch them on their chest, or would just outright refuse to let them. Like, let them. Like your spouse is not letting you walk around your own bedroom with your top off because it's offensive or gross or disgusting, which to me was really sad because I had quite the opposite reaction. So when I started to get the expanders in, my husband would do things like try and peek down my shirt or sensually caress my breasts, when it was like, dude, like, these things, there's all this basically is a glorified beanbag like under here, and you're treating them like they're my real breasts. But the thing was, the effect that had on me psychologically was that I myself identified these reconstructed breasts as my breasts. And it did wonders for me before, because I had such a beef with the breasts that I had before, because I'd had them since I was 9 years old, and I got all this negative attention from them since I was 9 years old, and I hated it. So in a way, I got removed from me a part of me that I hated, and I got like a new chance at loving my body. and loving my breasts. So it's odd that I love these reconstructed breasts way more than I ever did the ones God gave me. So I'd go to these support groups and then I hear people talking about their bodies in this way. And it's so dangerous to talk about your own body like it can't hear you. Like it is it's something to be trashed or thrown away. It's like it's the most beautiful vessel no matter what it looks like, and we treat it like garbage. We talk to it like garbage. If it isn't verbal, we're doing it in our heads. So your body is hearing all these negative things that you're saying about it, and it's responding in kind, like, oh, well, you think I'm fat? Oh, yeah, I am. Watch this. So based on how my husband treated my reconstructed breasts and how it kind of changed the way I thought about myself, the way I looked at myself as a whole kind of changed. My husband tried to encourage me to go into like hobby modeling. I told him, I said, there ain't nobody wants to see no over 40 fat white woman do anything. I ain't doing this. And because he tried to ask me before cancer treatment, I was like, ain't nobody want to see this. So I figured, what the heck, I almost died. I might as well try this. So I tried it, and the response I got from total strangers in regards to my capability completely changed. Like, I was already on the way to thinking of myself, not like hot shit, but like I wasn't a piece of, garbage, or a fat piece of garbage. And so I thought, well, if it can do this for me, maybe it would work for other breast cancer survivors. So I just asked the first 12 people that were in my support groups and stuff that I knew were crazy enough to just like, can we try and do this, and I'll dress you up and we'll see how you feel and we'll see what that can do for other people. And I originally wasn't going to be a nonprofit because I thought my friend owns a nonprofit and she's broke. I don't want to be broke. And but my husband really encouraged me, and he said we weren't able to make it as big of a fundraiser as we wanted, but maybe we can be our own nonprofit. And so at that point in time, I was only photographing young breast cancer survivors like as pinup models, and having support groups for breast cancer survivors as a part of the Young Survival Coalition. And about 3 years ago, the California Breast Cancer Research Program sent me an email, and I didn't know what it was for. They just wanted me to go to like, oh, we're having this meeting we want you to go to. And one of my girlfriends that was in the calendar had taken like a turn for the worst and was being put on hospice. And I had bought tickets to fly up to Sacramento to go see her because I wanted to see her. And she told me, I don't want anybody to see me. And it was the same weekend as I was supposed to do this CBCRP thing. And on my phone, that's all it was. And it had the CBCRP and like an address and a time. I didn't even know what it's for. So I'm like, when she told me she didn't want to see anybody, I was like, oh, I better go to this thing. So I come to find out that there are all these other like niche breast cancer organizations. So African American, Pacific Islander, Asian, LGBTQ, and then one that was just like an overall one. I didn't really get where I fit into the picture until I went around the table like in my mind, and I'm like, oh, young. That was me. So they wanted me to be a part of this program where they trained breast cancer outreach nonprofits, so people that work there, to be a co-PI. So a co-PI is like a researcher, but is on the community side. So researchers only know what they can come up with. So if they're not in a community, which makes clinical research and other things that are done like on African American communities imperative that they have someone in the community, because if researchers are just trying to come up on their own with research that needs to be done for communities, they can only go so far. So they can only go within their own mind's depth of what needs to be done. And so they often end up falling short because they really don't know what the problems are, because their feet, so to speak, are in the lab. They don't have one foot in the lab and one foot in the community. So I ended up being trained as a researcher, which if I would have known how much work it would have been, I probably would have done it, because again, struggle with like self-worth. So I'm thinking like, I don't have the brain capacity to be able to do this, but I trusted in what God had told me previously. I have a plan for you. And, you know, God has a little lantern. He doesn't have a spotlight. So he doesn't have like, you don't have like a lighthouse up here where you can see for miles. He gives you like a little, like it's like this little light. It's like, seriously. And that's all you can see is maybe 5 feet in front of you. But he wants you to trust him. So I go, okay, you want me to do this thing? I'll do this thing. So there were like 10 organizations that had started at this program. At the end, 5 were able to do a presentation at the end to be able to see if your grant would be. So it was like a mock, not like a mock trial, I forget what it's called, but it's a they go through it and they basically tell you if there's any flaws in it and you need to rewrite it. The first 2 were shot down in flames, and I looked over at my research partner, who I had to find on my own, who was at UCSD. You had to find somebody that was in the field of study that you wanted to study. What I wanted to do was to see if exercise positively affected young breast cancer survivors, both with body image and quality of life. So that's what I wanted to do. So when we do this mock go over of everybody's grants, first 2 get shot down in flames, and me and my research partner are like, we're done for. They go and read ours, and the person that was just so hard on the other 2 groups was just like, first off, I love whoever wrote this. And we were just like, we were blown away that they liked what we did and that we did it correctly. And we ended up submitting the grant and getting it funded. So I was able to participate in research with UCSD as a co-PI, so community outreach researcher, and to be able to supply the colleges that want to do research and want to be able to know how to help these communities, especially young breast cancer, because it's so uncommon, to be able to have a better quality of life. So we got the stats back. Overall, I think it took 3 years from beginning to do training to getting the grant to doing the research to having it done. And we finished 20% above what we had thought our numbers were going to be, which is fantastic. And so as a result of being a researcher, it has just grown our little nonprofit that was originally just photographing young breast cancer survivors, essentially to help them to feel like their bodies were beautiful and that they were sexual creatures and that they were able to continue on with more self-confidence in their life. It's just blossomed into all of these different great opportunities. We now work with USC, and the main goal of the committee that we're on at USC is to improve enrollment for minorities in clinical trials. So clinical trials seems like a shoddy operation. Like when you think of it, you're like, oh, a clinical trial, it's like a Russian roulette kind of a thing, but it really isn't. You get more care and more access to people who are going to help you when you are in a clinical trial than you do normally getting help at a doctor's office. Like they give you, phone numbers pretty much 24/7 to have somebody answer your questions. I didn't have that. I went to a regular doctor's office. And one of the other things I learned from the state was they educated us in statistics. So that was when I learned the vast difference in quality of care between minorities and whites primarily. And it's just disgusting how different it is and how low a quality of care minorities get. And I just can't tell you enough. Let's make sure my dogs aren't barking. Hey! I just can't tell you enough how I want to help enroll minorities in the different types of clinical trials. Had a little brain freezer. In the clinical trials that are going on, because like I said earlier, we're all individually operating systems, and we all have different ancestors, and just like our blood types are different and respond differently to different kinds of treatment and different types of food, like how are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to adequately help people if we don't know how they respond to different types of medication? Different types of breast cancer affect exponentially different racial groups as well, which is like, well, there has to be more research in regards to how we better help people that are affected with these like low number occurring types of breast cancer. Just because they're low number occurring doesn't mean that we can't help them. It just means we need to do more research into how to help those individuals. And don't even get me started on metastatic. I was educated on metastatic as well when we started doing the photo shoots, because I didn't realize how they were treated differently within our community. In a way, they're treated like lepers amongst our community. They don't want people to talk about being metastatic. I didn't even know what it was. I just knew I was stage 3, and I was like, oh, well, if I have more than that, I guess I'm stage 4. But I had no idea what metastatic even meant, or the stigma that's around people that are metastatic. I've had the pleasure of knowing a lot of women that are metastatic and kind of being their last contact before they left this plane. And there's been no higher honor in my life than to have been there and to be available for somebody in the last days of their life. And as a result, my best friend passed about a month and a half ago from metastatic uterine cancer. But she had breast cancer as well. And she really had me educated on being a death doula and being there for people in their last days. I've never been afraid of dying, only afraid of suffering or being a burden to people, and I've already done that. So I don't need to be afraid of that anymore. But I think being there for someone in their end of days when it's completely frightening is really needed and really important. And so that's also come a part of House of Volta because of my experience with people that needed it. So yeah, kind of like a Jacqueline of all trades.
So, Stori, you have mentioned.
I need a drink.
You've talked all around House of Volta.
Yeah.
Volta.
Yeah.
Tell us exactly what it is.
So
No, go ahead and sip that.
Okay. So I have no beef with anybody that's got any kind of nonprofit that says like boobs or whatever, so that people like understand it's for breast cancer. I just think it's kind of crass. Like, as gross as my sense of humor is, like, I just thought it was crass to use it as a title for my nonprofit. And honestly, when House of Volta started, I wanted to be the next Huell Hauser. Like, I don't know if you know who Huell Hauser is. He's on PBS, and he goes around the state and talks about, like, this donut shop's been around here since the 30s and this is their specialty. Like, that was what I wanted to do. And so I gave it a name that was kind of really undefined. And so it could be what I wanted to, but what it ended up being is it's influenced by the fashion culture. So a fashion house will have like a lot of people working together for one goal or one style or look. In the LGBT community, out, 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 out. Sorry about that. In the LGBTQ community, house is in regards to, there's a house mother who kind of like takes care of other people and guides them into how to be a better human being and how to develop their look and how to develop their character. And so it's kind of like a fashion house and a drag house, like, kind of put together. The Volta part comes from my love of science. Alejandro Volta, he figured out the unit of measurement for electricity, created volts and the first battery, so like voltage. So it's just that I'm a giant science goober, and that's where that one comes from.
And so specifically, what do you all do?
So right now what we do is we photograph young breast cancer survivors as pinup models for the calendar that we produce yearly. We had to stop the photographing process last year because of COVID. And what we usually do is we turn these into a big calendar, and then we sell some of them, and then we send them to breast cancer treatment hospitals throughout the United States. We mentor people that are going through the breast cancer process. So if they want someone that's younger to talk to, that's something that we do. We do self-love coaching for anybody. And then we were doing the research, which just finished. And I would love to have another research job, but right now it's community outreach and encouraging them to love their bodies and love themselves and understand that they're perfect just the way that they are, and that there's no such thing as ugly. There's only such a thing as I don't know what to do with this.
Wow, you have truly been through a very healthy journey, and to learn from what we've experienced individually and then to be able to give that back to other people is such a marvelous thing.
Thank you.
So I just really want to, hats off to you
Thank you.
and your team for continuing to do the work. Celebrate Life's motto is a community conquering cancer together. And surely none of us can do this by ourselves.
Exactly.
And so I look forward to continued support from you and to be able to support you as we go through this journey. Earlier you mentioned something that's not related to breast cancer about your daughter. She
Okay.
has a little project. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. So I have custody of my great nieces. We went through a very long and exhausting 2 years to get guardianship of them. You saw her, the one that came in here earlier. She really has a heart for the homeless, but I always try and like figure out the root of things, and her memory is not good. It's part of the trauma process is you just shut off the bad things that happen to you, and done a lot of work like on psychology and trauma in regards to take care of her and her sister more adequately and understand what they're going through. So she really has a heart for the homeless, but I do know that they were kind of homeless. They were shipped from like one motel to the other, and it was in a very bad way. And so I think she very much described resounds with not having a home and not having somewhere to stay and not having things and clean things. And so we're putting little gift bags together. My sister-in-law gave me backpacks, so we're making 10 backpacks. We're gonna have some nice, like the foofy, smelly like shower soap, some lip gloss, toothpaste. I got some blankets to put in there because I'm super cuddly. I think even in the summer, I have a blanket on my lap if I'm watching TV. So we have blankets and backpacks, and we're just putting that kind of stuff together, and we're hoping to get it to some youngsters that need it before the new year.
Well, we're definitely going to be working with you to help you make that happen.
Thank you.
So is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
Let's see. So a lot of the doubt that you have in your mind was put there by other people. It doesn't actually reflect on your capability. And a lot of times when you have anxiety towards a thing, it's just because the forces of darkness like to keep you sad and sorry and incapable. And what that is they don't want you to move on. So they're going to make you feel like every possible bad thing could happen if you choose to step out of your comfort zone and do this thing that is going to elevate you, elevate your status, give you more confidence, and move you towards your end goal. So just know that that anxiety is basically all a lie. Not that those things can't really happen to you, because if the devil talked to you in a voice that didn't make any sense, it wouldn't work. But he talks to you in a way in which it makes complete and total sense. So you stay underneath his foot so you don't dare go up into the light. But just know that that anxiety and that fear is just fake. It's like a smell in the air, and it's not real. Although the dangers are all there, it's all realistic things that could happen. But just know that it's like a ruse, and that all you have to do is walk right through it and just do what you want to do and elevate your status in the way that you want to, in a way that talks to you, in the way that your heart says, and not to listen to that, because he's just happy with you underneath his foot, not trying anything new and not going out and conquering anything. But that's not where you want to be. You want to be out of his way and out of his smoke and into your confidence and into yourself and growing into yourself and becoming whole and bright and beautiful like God intended you to be.
Amen. Amen. Well, Stori, I just really want to thank you for coming in and sharing your story with us today. And I appreciate you so, so very much. But again, I am Pastor Rhonda, founder of Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry. And if you are on the cancer journey and you would like someone to walk with you, we are here for you. We can be reached on our website at celebratelife.cm.org. Or if you're in the journey and you want to talk to somebody, feel free to give us a call at 424-258-5433. and we look forward to serving you soon. Bye now.